Hello valued viewers, I hope you're all doing very well. Today we're going to look at the laydown bombing delivery mode. Laydown bombing is a horizontal delivery mode. It is best done at a low altitude and usually with cluster bombs or high drag munitions. Laydown bombing at its simplest is a time-released mechanism. The pilot identifies an initial point, starts a timer, and then bombs are released when the timer expires. The IP can either be identified as a landmark or by using the pipper to identify the distance from the target when given a known altitude above that target. All the calculations that you need as the pilot can be brought up using the bomb calculator tool. The procedure is relatively simple, but in practice very difficult to do with any degree of accuracy. The cockpit setup for the pilot is standard for most bombs. Set the diffusing to nose, tail, or nose and tail. Select the stations that are armed with the bombs. Arm the master arm. Change the delivery mode to L for laydown. Change the weapon selector to bombs. And set the desired interval if releasing multiple bombs. Also, set the quantity. For today's demonstration, I will be using C for continuous, to drop all the bombs in a continuous run. Next, we will change the HUD mode to air to ground, and we will use the bombing computer to calculate the mils we need to set the reticle to. For the bombing table, select L for the delivery mode for laydown. Select the type of ordnance you will be deploying. In this case, we're using Mark 82 Snake Eyes. Set the intended run-in speed. Set the run-in altitude, the distance from the IP initial point to the target, and the target altitude. In this case, the target is very close to 2,000 feet, so I will be attempting a 500-foot run-in on the target. Click Tell Jester when you have the properties entered, and Jester will set up the WRCS. In this middle section, we can see the release range and the sight depression needs to be set to 84 mils, and time of flight of the Mark 82s is expected to be 6.7 seconds. Since I set up a release interval of 0.2 of a second, I plug that in here. I did not change the multiplier, and I want the fifth bomb to land at about the first point of impact. So Jester will then set an advance of 800 milliseconds to cause the first bomb to actually land slightly ahead of the aim point. Click Tell Jester here to have him enter that into the computer. Now that we know the mils for the sight depression, enter that into the reticle. We can pop into the back seat by pressing 2 on the keyboard, and we can see that Jester has entered the values into the WRCS. Here we can see that Jester has entered the 800 milliseconds into the advance, and he has set the release range to 2,193 feet. The tricky part for the pilot is now the pilot must fly the designated altitude, must fly the designated airspeed across the target and release the bombs at the right time. An extra complication is that this airspeed indicator is not the one that you need to use for an accurate speed reference. What I have found you need to do to help with this is turn up all the interior lighting on the right-hand consoles. Turning on the lights enables the true airspeed indicator to be seen more easily in the upper left corner of the dash. When we specified the speed in the bomb table, it referenced true airspeed rather than indicated, which is shown here. And in fact, in this example, we can see that the indicated airspeed is locked right on 400 knots, but our true airspeed is 424.5 knots. So in flying onto the target, we need to hold this as close to the airspeed that we plugged into the bombing table as we can, while maintaining as close to the correct altitude as possible. It can be somewhat helpful to use the radar altimeter here because I know my altitude above the target was specified as 500 feet. So I can use these two gauges to try and lock on. The only problem is that this gauge is very sensitive to undulations in the ground and may not provide an easy reading to follow. Let's attempt a run-in on our target. Here we are about to hit the target, and we can start to see the difficulty of this method. I am slightly fast at 415 knots, and a little bit low. My radar altimeter shows me at about 450 feet, which lines up with my barometric altimeter. Now I will guide the pipper onto the target, press and hold the bomb release button. When I press the button, a tone will play as the timer counts down for the release. When the tone stops, the bombs will start to release. Through this whole process, I will continue holding down the bomb button to release all the bombs. Bombs away.